Thank you, and thank you for having us.
So this is Ash Sheriff with the Real Estate Assessment Center, and I am standing in for David Vargas this evening, who sends his regards. Unfortunately, in the last 10 to 15 minutes or so, he had a family emergency that he needed to attend to. So he apologizes that he cannot be with you all this evening. He certainly had hoped to be. But David and I and Dan have worked very collaboratively together on the materials that you're going to be presented this evening or this afternoon. I apologize. I know you're 3 hours or so behind where we're at. And so I am going to take David's spot in the lineup by talking about REAC's physical inspections return to operations plan. And then I'm going to turn it over to Dan, who has been our just amazing lead and expert with respect to the NSPIRE program. So Dan, if you want to go to the next slide, I'm going to jump right into the RTO, as we call it. So I'm sure many of you have heard and seen the information that HUD has posted to its website related to the inspections return to operations that the Real Estate Assessment Center has put together on behalf of the Department of Housing and Urban Development. There was a press release. There's been weekly information posted to REAC's website about the REAC return to operations. And I want to stress, and this is extremely important, that in contemplating the return of operations for physical inspections and the resumption of physical inspections, that REAC's and HUD's highest priority has been the health, safety, and welfare of all of those involved in the conduct of the inspection activities. And this includes residents, PHA and POA staff, the inspectors, as well as other HUD employees. And this is really unprecedented, like so many things during this time, whereby the primary purpose of HUD's physical inspections, as many of you know, is a core part of HUD's mission, and that is to ensure the health and safety of HUD subsidized rental housing units. Well, we now have another very critical health and safety component to think about, and that is the public health component. So we're not just concerned about the health and safety of what's going on in units with respect to the life-threatening defects and the physical condition of units. We also have to be extremely in tune and extremely contemplative of the public health crises that we're all dealing with on a day-to-day basis in the operations of the housing that you all do, and the units that are housed, or the families that are housed in the units that you operate, as well as the inspectors that may be going into those units, and whether those are HUD employees or contract inspectors that HUD uses. This is our highest priority. Can't stress that enough. Resuming HUD physical inspections, given the circumstances we're all dealing with, is going to require deference and flexibility for all involved. And we must all exercise an abundance of caution. I'm sure you're dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, and your decisions with respect to the operations and maintenance of units. And we're aware that we have to be similarly flexible and apply deference where necessary to make sure that we keep everybody safe. And we know that inspectors will encounter circumstances where a scheduled inspection cannot occur. And we'll discuss that a little bit more as we go through the presentation. We have protocols in place to guide an inspector making a last-minute decision that is intended to protect the health and safety of those involved in the inspection process, both the residents of the unit, as well as PHA and POA staff, and the inspector her or himself. So, and then, REAC's going to provide significant guidance to its federal and contract inspectors. This is an iterative process. We are learning more every day. We're learning more about the conditions on the ground. We're learning more about best practices in terms of public health and keeping people safe. Certainly people have become very familiar with the acronym PPE. We are always looking for ways of evaluating and analyzing data about the local health conditions on the ground, as well as inspection protocols that will keep all parties safe. And so I think as many of you have probably seen on HUD's website and have heard, through some of the industry presentations that have already taken place by HUD, that best case scenario that the target inspection resumption is going to be sometime this fall. It's hard to believe that we've crossed into September, but yes, if things permit, and that's a big if, and I'll stress, you'll hear the word if a lot. The target inspection resumption would be this fall. So Dan, next slide, please. So the purpose, objectives, and the outcome of the inspections RTO is first to detail all of the necessary activities for the safe resumption of inspections. And like I said, this is an iterative process. We're learning more and more every day, and that's guiding updates to our protocols. So the RTO is what I would consider to be a living document. It wasn't a plan that is not adaptable. It's not a plan that is a snapshot in time. We are all learning as we go along in this new environment that we live in. And so, but the plan is to provide us a very detailed framework and a set of actions and activities that REAC can undertake to, we hope, maximize the safety of all parties involved in the resumption of inspections, as well as to identify the risk and constraints to the safe conduct of inspections. Our objectives, of course, are to safely resume inspections of, primarily at first HUD's multifamily housing portfolio, and I'll stress that over and over again. HUD multifamily is desiring the resumption of inspections for its high-risk properties. On the public housing side, we're very much affected and aware and guided by HUD, PIH Notice 2020-05, which, provides relief from various indicators under the public housing assessment system, including physical inspections. So, we're looking primarily at multifamily housing. And then, another objective is to target and prioritize, inspect those properties most in need of inspection using risk-based criteria. A simple way to think about that, which we'll talk about a little bit more, is we're really focusing, only on those properties that are very, very high risk and in safe areas, as deemed by data collected and analyzed by Johns Hopkins University, as well as a methodology created by Harvard to evaluate the safety of counties throughout the country. So high risk properties and hopefully, low risk areas in terms of the public health situation that we're all dealing with. And then certainly it's important for us to demonstrate the continued importance of physical inspections. We know that there is a need to go out and inspect properties. We know that there are high risk properties based on recent inspections, and it's critically important to the integrity of the overall program that HUD continues to conduct physical inspections. Now in this time, we're, like I said, focused on the highest of high risk properties. So, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then certainly if we achieve our objectives, we will have identified and implemented strategies to keep all parties safe. We, will reduce the backlog of physical inspections for particularly those high-risk properties. And we will also looking at creating innovative inspection types. Some of you may have heard of remote video inspections that meet or exceed the quality of inspections before COVID. Next slide, please. So this is our timeline, and of course, at least this first date is in the rearview mirror now. On August 7th, we provided notification to the industry on our resumption of physical inspections in a limited manner, and posted information to HUD's website, including what we call our heat map, which is a geospatial analysis of counties and areas, and a list of those counties that are rated, 1 of 4 risk levels, and we use a color-coded scale for our heat map, where counties are either rated green, orange, yellow, or red, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And so, thinking about the heat map, if we identify counties that are out there, counties first, not properties, but if we identify counties out there that are safe, and by safe, we're talking about 6 weeks at least of data where that county has, showed up as a green county, which means a low risk county using that Johns Hopkins data that I talked about. By September 1st, if there are high risk properties in those green counties, those properties could potentially receive their 14-day notification, which is consistent with existing HUD regulations. And then, by October 5th, if, once again, there's that if word again, if those counties are still deemed safe, the first set of inspections could begin. And like I said, most inspections will be for the multifamily portfolio. And I want to stress that the bar and the conditions by which we're looking at public housing properties, particularly in light of, PIH Notice 2020-05, is, a lot of conditions have to be met. The first is they have to be identified as high risk, and we'll talk about some of that in a little bit, what criteria goes into that. Whereas, no score, and then if we do inspect a high risk property, no score will be issued, only an inspection report. The second is, situations which require emergency inspections, and those do occur. I don't want to say they're certainly not rare. The infrequent is probably a good way to describe them. We're alerted to emergency situations that require inspection. Once again, no score will be issued, only an inspection report. And then lastly, a troubled PHA under the public housing assessment system requests an inspection. And we envision that those are situations where a troubled PHA would like, REAC to perform an inspection so it could potentially move out of troubled status, in which case a score would be provided to potentially allow for that. So next slide, please, Dan. Okay, there's really kind of 3 steps in the process for determining and or actually executing an inspection. The first is, like I said, the property priority. Is the property high risk as identified by either the Office of Multifamily Housing or public housing, the program offices? The second is property availability. And by that we mean, are these high risk properties located in areas that are deemed to be safe, deemed in that green zone on our heat map over the course of 6 consecutive weeks. So if during any one of those 6 weeks, the property dipped from green to yellow, the clock resets, and that's kind of an important point to make. So we look at the high risk properties and hopefully what are considered to be low risk areas from a public health standpoint. And then lastly, even if those 2 criteria are met, we're looking at inspector availability. We may or may not be able to get an inspector to those properties in a safe fashion. And we're certainly aware of various travel restrictions that are in place and local public health restrictions that are in place around quarantining. And so, one of the things that we are evaluating and analyzing is making sure that we can conduct inspections without inspectors crossing state lines, for example. So that inspector availability is the last step in the process. And if all of those steps are met, so to speak, we would proceed with the inspection consistent with the 14-day notification preceded by that 6 weeks of a green rating for that particular county. Next slide, please, Dan. So this goes into a little bit more detail about what we call our planning, communications, and safety gates. The first is the plan, and this plan has been several months in the making. We've been working on this plan really since the spring, and so we've now presented this plan in multiple forums publicly, and certainly presented this plan to senior leadership at HUD to gain their approval. So nobody is treading lightly here. We're all taking this extremely serious. Planning is absolutely essential. And then, step 2 is this ongoing process of which we're posting this information and, in trying to be as transparent as possible, posting this information to the web where we identify states and localities where inspections can likely begin. If they are green for that 6-week period, letting people know, including all of you, kind of what goes into our decision-making process. So what goes into our analysis about what constitutes a safe county and what goes into our definition of what constitutes a high priority property. So we're making that information public and available to all of you. The third step is we are actively engaged with our contract partners who, as I think many of you know, conduct the majority of our inspections. We're working with them to help make sure that they feel safe, and that requires contractual changes in some cases with our partners that conduct many of our inspections. And then, we've passed through gate 4 where HUD leadership has certainly approved. Many of you have seen the press release that was issued by HUD and the Secretary's quotes with respect to the resumption of inspection. So HUD leadership has approved of us returning or resuming inspections. And this, this gate 5, what we're doing here this afternoon is an example of our communications and safety gates, where we're having these forums and having these discussions with people, but also in the meantime, we're working on personal protective equipment for federal inspectors as well as contract inspectors, and then posting information to our website. And then if we identify properties in those counties that meet the criteria, we would potentially issue the 14-day notices. Then even after the 14-day notices are issued, we are going to revalidate the safety and availability of the property. That's a 2-step process where we're looking 2 days before the inspection to evaluate any new information that we may have at our disposal. And then even on the day of inspection, we have protocols whereby the inspector can essentially work with REAC to call off and or reschedule the inspection as necessary. So even up to 2 days before and the day of inspection, we're revalidating the safety and availability of the property before conducting the inspection. Next slide, please. So other safety and logistics risks, certainly, we're constrained like a lot of people in terms of the availability of personal protective equipment. So, we will not send an inspector into the field if they do not have the appropriate PPE. We have built into our protocols pre-inspection temperature checks and validation, as well as on-site notification processes for health-related issues. So we may, like I said, on the day of inspection, arrive on site and be notified by the PHA or POA representative that there's an outbreak or there's a health issue at the property, and it may not be the best time to conduct an inspection. So that's built into our protocols as well. I touched on the travel considerations already in terms of, we're working to make sure that inspectors are not crossing state lines in light of and in consideration of local health restrictions that may be in place about quarantining, et cetera, as well as, we certainly know that, travel is constrained right now in certain ways. And then, looking at, of course, these additional potential flare-ups that occur and are occurring throughout the country. Also looking at managing the social distancing in units and, establishing protocols to hopefully achieve that, including the number of people that would potentially be in the unit at any given point in time. And then pre and post inspection COVID-19 testing for inspectors. So these are just a sampling of the protocols that have been developed. And as I mentioned, those protocols are constantly being refined and evaluated and improved and enhanced. Next slide, please. We have developed a detailed inspection protocol guide for both our federal and contract inspectors. We are, that inspection protocol guide is taken into consideration feedback we have received across multiple of these briefings to our industry partners, as well as the expertise of our inspectors who, go out into these units, at least pre-COVID, go out into these units every day. We've looked at best practices, from various other federal agencies as well, the CDC, et cetera. And so a lot has gone into the protocol guide. And like I said, that's a living document that we continue to improve and enhance. The protocols are our detailed kind of playbook for our inspectors to follow when conducting an inspection. And as mentioned, the protocols cover both, pre kind of inspection activities, day of inspection of activities, and post-inspection protocols. Also looking at travel and logistics, as well as the acquisition of personal protective equipment. Next slide, please. So some of these protocols, which can be very, very detailed, and so this is a little bit of a high-level summary. We're going to require our contractors as well as our federal inspectors to wear face masks and gloves and use hand sanitizer at a minimum when conducting inspections. Our PHAs and POAs are responsible for communicating local restrictions. We can do all of the analysis and all of the due diligence possible, but nobody's going to know the conditions better than you all. So it's critically important that you communicate accordingly when there are potential outbreaks or issues at any particular property that may be slated for inspection. So let us know, as I'm sure you will. And so, it's important for you all to communicate, and that's built into our protocols. And then, HUD has protocols in place, as I mentioned, to determine whether or not an inspection should be canceled, even up to the day of the inspection. So we know there's going to be situations where an inspector arrives on site and we will still end up canceling the inspection and then potentially rescheduling it. Next slide, please. So the health risk score, this slide gets into our methodology for determining whether or not a county is green, orange, yellow, or red, our heat map, green being the safest, red being the least safe in terms of public health data. And we use a methodology from the Harvard Global Health Institute, and you can see the link there. And we look at the total confirmed cases over a period of time, normalized to the population of the county and the state, in this case, the county. We're using confirmed case data from Johns Hopkins University, which, by many means is being used by several entities as one of the leading sources, if not the leading source, for data on a county level or local level about the incidence of COVID-19 cases. We're updating that data and that analysis on a weekly basis and posting those updates to HUD's website weekly. I already mentioned the normalization, and for NYC, which may not apply to all of you, we're looking at multiple counties, so we're localizing the analysis where necessary. Next slide, please. The overall health risk scores are categorized using the following criteria. Low or green is less than 1 daily new case per 100,000 people, ranging to red, which is 24 or more daily new cases per 100,000 people. And yellow and orange are in between. I may have accidentally reversed orange and yellow at times during this presentation, but it's green, yellow, orange, red, not green, orange, yellow, red. And you can see the number of cases per 100,000 people over that 7-day average. And so this is what we look at on a week-to-week basis. But we are also, in order to even issue the 14-day notice, a property has to be located in a county that has been analyzed and evaluated as green for 6 consecutive weeks. So even if in that 6th week it goes from green to yellow, the clock restarts. So I want to stress that. Next slide, please. So this is a state level example of the county heat map using data as of August 2nd. We actually have some updated information, as I'm sure many of you have seen on HUD's website. As I mentioned, we have been updating this weekly, but this is a carryover from a previous version of this presentation. So the map probably looks a little bit differently. I can't remember if there are still any green states. There may not be. But this is a state level representation of the state of the COVID health risk score per that Harvard Global Health Institute methodology. But we look at a county level, so we can drill this down into a county level map, and we've been posting those county level results to HUD's website. Next slide, please. So this is an example of the county level data that's been posted to HUD's website. Once again, this is a little bit dated by about a month, but you can see in those 2 rightmost columns, we're adding a column to our analysis every week. So, it goes July 26th, August 2nd, the next column's August 9th, and August 16th, and August 23rd. And so, in order for, like I said, that property to have to be issued that 14-day notice, it has to be high risk for one, but it also has to be in a county that's green over that 6-week period. So you should regularly check HUD's website to see, what counties are rated, in terms of what public health risk, and that'll be a good indicator or heads up in terms of how HUD evaluates the county where you may have a property that's located in that county. So next slide, please. So I mentioned that in addition to looking at the public health conditions on the ground, we're looking at high risk properties and hopefully low risk public health counties. And so we use what's called the inspection criticality score to do that. A criticality of 5 is most critical. You can see there's kind of 4 pretty stringent criteria there. The prior inspection has to be conducted by a decertified inspector, or a prior inspection score is less than 60, or the overall unit score is less than 60, or there was no prior inspection and the data funds availability is greater than 3 years back. So these are properties that have never been inspected, but have essentially been in service or subsidized by HUD at least for 3 years. So they're properties we've really never seen. And then, the criteria become a little less stringent as you go down from red to orange to green to black. We are not looking right now at anything below criticality level 5. And, at least as we are updating our data on a weekly basis, there really aren't a lot of properties that meet the criteria. And we haven't even gone through 6 weeks worth of data yet. So there aren't a lot of criticality level 5 properties in counties that have been consistently green. And like I said, we haven't even hit that 6-week benchmark yet. So, right now we're talking about very, very few properties, and that may change as we approach that 6-week benchmark. So something really important to keep in mind. Next slide, please. So the summary is, as I mentioned, REAC's going to be primarily inspecting HUD multifamily properties at first, except in a couple of cases. The public housing properties are identified as high risk. And you saw the criticality ratings on the previous slide. Like I said, at least for now, we're only looking at properties that would be a criticality level 5. And then public housing properties that require an emergency inspection. And in both the cases of the high risk properties and the emergency inspections, we're not looking at, we would not be issuing a score, only an inspection report. And then lastly, a troubled PHA under FOS requests an inspection. And in that case, the score would be provided. And so there's a link there, which is, basically REAC's website. Hopefully you've been following along week to week as REAC posts additional information. But with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Dan. I don't think there's any additional slides. So, and Dan's going to take over from here and tell you more about NSPIRE.
Thank you, Ash. And thank you everyone for having us today. I hope folks are generally familiar with NSPIRE. This is mostly an update. If you need some more background info, there's quite a bit of that on the website. But feel free to ask questions if there's things you want to clarify that aren't in the slides, either through chat, and I'll try to go quickly, save some time at the end. All right, so we have a 4,500 property cap on participation in the demonstration. Right now, we're over 4,000 volunteers that have been approved and accepted into the demonstration. So there still are about 450 seats left, and that's per property, not per PHA or entity. So if you're interested, there still is some time to sign up. And like Ash described, we're also preparing for our return to operations plan. Any on-site work is going to follow something very similar to what you saw in the prior slides. We're also planning to use some of our demonstration flexibility to test things like remote inspections. That's something we're sort of working out across the agency for a variety of programs, but it's something we want to push very heavily during the NSPIRE demonstration to sort of minimize that direct contact, but also to we think there are locations where maintenance activities haven't really stopped. We've heard from quite a few properties that they've continued in a limited fashion, and if they're already going into units or common spaces, that they'd be comfortable doing some of that testing with us because they're already going into those places. Some more information will be coming out on that. If that's something you're in the demonstration, interested in participating with us or exploring, either from the NSPIRE inspection side or the self-inspection side, drop us a note. The email address is at the end, and we'd be happy to talk to you about what that would look like. The other major update, and this was pretty significant, it happened last month, was the publication of the version 1.3 standards. So we're taking a very iterative approach to these standards as we get feedback from the website, from the field testing we did pre-COVID, pause on inspections, some of the analysis we've done, some of the workshops and webinars we've done with stakeholders. We're committed to publish those updates. So this was a pretty major revision. It included, for the first time, the clear indicators of what the standards would be across programs. The first set didn't really have the HCV applicability. So now, because NSPIRE is going to be aligned standards for all programs, you can see how the results would vary between a project-based program and a tenant-based HCV program, or the project-based HCV program. So it has that pass, fail, and time of repair field in it. That was something we've been asked to do, and and that's included in this version. They also have a new template. We got some feedback that the old one was harder to read. Hopefully this one is easier. If not, let us know. We're open to changing again. The other sort of major update that we are working toward is a proposed rule. Can't go into too many details because we're still in that initial process with OMB. But as those negotiations continue, we expect to have a rule out at some point soon. Hopefully some of you have been to the website. We relaunched the website. It has a new look and feel, a lot of new content there. We're also publishing regular newsletters, so you can sign up for those on our listserv on the website, and you'll get those. They're more or less every monthly. Sometimes they're every couple months. Kind of gives a digest of what's been going on and what's going to be upcoming. We've done a series of webinars and workshops, both with PHAs, property owners, and we had our first resident focus workshop. We have a couple more scheduled through the end of this fiscal year, and those will pick up again in fiscal year 2021 in the October-November timeframe. So if you weren't able to participate or weren't included in one of the invitations, don't worry. There will be more opportunities. We had focused the first round really around standards and engaging with those folks who are part of the demonstration. That's another advantage of signing up, is that real direct access. On scoring, I know we get a lot of requests for that. I think the COVID emergency has caused some delay there. It's a data-driven exercise, so without having real field results coming back, we're not comfortable releasing kind of the initial thoughts there. I think once we can get a few either virtualized or in-person inspections behind us using the NSPIRE standards, there'll be more information coming. Right now, it's a concept, and that's really hard to show without the data. And then we work with our CIO partners on software, and then once we are again a little closer there, that's another one where we want to engage more proactively with industry, with software vendors. We understand, right, inspections are something that happen electronically today. So we need to figure out how those data exchange processes are going to work. I mentioned the standards being aligned. From the voucher side, they are also running a demonstration. Their plan is that those standards, they're actually being loaded now. I checked in on that today, and they were making progress. And then sometime in the November timeframe, the UPCSV demonstration, if you guys are familiar with that, that was an effort to test UPCS-based standards in the HCV program. We'll be migrating to NSPIRE. So like I said earlier, the NSPIRE standards are intended to be aligned standards for all programs. So you'll be seeing that shift with some transition there. And then as testing goes through on both programs, ultimately the idea is to have one set of standards instead of the multiple sets we have today. For RVI, we are working through some internal processes there. We understand that some PHAs may already be using technology to support voucher inspections, both pre and during COVID. If there's, again, I think what we'd say there is if there's interest in that, in the application of things like Zoom, like we're using right now, as part of an inspection or maintenance process, that's something HUD's interested in exploring. So please reach out. We're looking for people to talk to us about that, concerns, best practices, those types of things. We'll try to share what we're learning as well. Here's the overall sort of set of milestones. They're not on a timeline, partly because obviously fieldwork has been somewhat delayed. So as we move through this progression, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. So I don't know if I said that, but all our standards and all the revisions are being posted to the website. They have a built-in way to get feedback. So we're trying to communicate that as those changes occur. We're kind of in that sort of bottom 3 or 4 boxes. So we're doing test and evaluation that's going to lead to these NSPIRE inspections based on those critical to quality or CTQ standards, which are the replacement inspection standards. We move through rulemaking, standard stabilization, and then I think the most important takeaway is we're committing to transparency beyond the regulation itself, right? So we want to make sure we're publishing a notice that contains the standards and give you all the opportunity to give that formal feedback on the standards, not just at the reg. I'm an attorney by background, so some of us go into more of the weeds on some of those policy guidance things, but the current regs are at a pretty high level. If you want to know how the inspection is going to work, you got to read a bunch of other documents, and we want to make sure we're putting those out in a very clear, transparent way with an opportunity for feedback. So there will be one or more notices that have the standards, the scoring model, and then sampling and administrative processes for your formal input. During the demonstration, of course, you can give input at any time. And then after the rule goes effective at some future date, we're anticipating having at least a year of advisory scores to re-baseline the portfolio. We expect the NSPIRE standards, kind of what's out there now, to kind of continue in that same vein, and they're likely to be different enough from UPCS to make those scores maybe not one-to-one comparable. So we're anticipating having to re-baseline everyone at some point. The next set of slides are sort of my sales pitch to you, if you haven't already, to sign up for the demonstration. We think there's a lot of advantages for both of us, both you and the department, for volunteering properties. And we love acronyms in government, so we have one too. I'll talk through each in turn. So I'd say one of the biggest ways you can help us is providing feedback on the standards. Like I said, they're on the website. That can be very dense to read. So what we would like, and what we did in early field work, is when we go out to do an NSPIRE inspection or field work, it's a much more collaborative event during the demonstration. We want to talk to you, we want to talk to your maintenance folks. We want to ask some more questions, right? Does it make sense that this is a deficiency? Where would you put this in your own maintenance plan or your work order system? An immediate fix? You treat it like an emergency? Is it something that's, you're going to get it to in 30 days, 60 days? Or is it truly deferred or planned maintenance? This is something that will be handled on a year out, 2 years out, 3 years out. We want to make sure we're assessing real things that have real relationships to the way good properties are being managed. And the best way to get that is to talk to you all. So I know some folks have said, UPCS inspections aren't very collaborative. That's partly by design, because they're serving an oversight role. During the demonstration, it's intended to be a collaborative event. So that's really your opportunity to have that direct line to us on the standards. And obviously everything flows from that. If the standards aren't where we want them to be, the scoring is going to reflect that as well. Another big advantage is that UPCS inspections essentially stop once you're approved to be part of the demonstration. So any score you had, your last score prior to being approved, your last REAC score would carry forward for your duration of the time you're in the demonstration. I think there was some confusion about this from prior messaging we gave out, so I just want to kind of reiterate that if you sign up and are approved by HUD to be in the NSPIRE demonstration, all your normal REAC inspections will stop. No scores will be issued. Any NSPIRE score you get would be advisory, just so you'd be aware of what it would have looked like under NSPIRE, were they real inspections, and that carries forward through your participation. Like I mentioned before, there's only a couple spots left, and once those fill, that's kind of the limit. That was in the notice. That's kind of one of the things we had to do, was set a limit, and we're nearing that. Regardless of whether you participate in the demonstration or not, we still like you to be informed. So we appreciate opportunities to do talks like this, and encourage everybody to check the website regularly and sign up for the newsletter. Already mentioned advisory scores. So not only do the UPCS scores stop, but your NSPIRE scores would be advisory. You also get kind of that sneak peek of what the score would look like had we been at sort of final implementation. And then there was some prior confusion, and we'll take responsibility. We may not have been quite so clear on the self-inspection side. So one of the requirements for participating in the demonstration is that a property do self-inspections. Obviously, during COVID, that's somewhat halted because we don't want you to expose your staff or residents to undue risk. And then the idea there is that those self-inspections kind of fill the gap between REAC inspections. So a REAC inspection today is every 1 to 3 years. We're going to potentially every 1 to 5 years for good scoring properties in the future. But in order to mitigate that risk when we're not there, we're saying, look, an industry best practice is going to your units. From the multifamily side, we're hearing, that's once a quarter. From the private sector, it's it's once a quarter, if not more frequently. But we understand that it's not reasonable in all cases, so we're saying at least once a year. Get into the units, identify maintenance and modernization needs, make sure that information gets back into your work order system, whatever that looks like, and send us that outcome, right? Not that you fixed all of those things, because we understand some things happen on a schedule, but that you're identifying the needs, right? That's really what HUD is trying to understand, right? Because we want to encourage that best practice. We want to understand that you understand kind of your risk of your property at any given point in time. We heard in the past, some folks try to wait until right before REAC to do all their maintenance activities or to do their punch list stuff. And we understand why that occurs, but really what we want to encourage is year-round property maintenance. We think this is one way to help do that. And then training for the future. So we want to, like I said, have a collaborative dialogue with you as we talk through standards and HUD's thinking out in the field. We understand that's a two-way street, right? You're telling us stuff that we need to know, and we're there telling you our sort of understanding of, hey, here's why these types of problems, deficiencies are real problems. And we've attempted to do that through the rationale section on the standards, which is kind of HUD's narrative description of why these things are real issues. But when we're there, we want to engage in that dialogue. There's also opportunities like focus groups, workshops, and other ways we can engage in smaller groups one-on-one. But just being in the demonstration by the nature of the activity we're doing is a more collaborative event. So how to volunteer, there's a simple sign-up form on the website. You just let us know which properties you want. It can be one or many of your properties. You do not have to put them all in. If you want to put one in and wait and see, that's fine too. And then HUD does a minimal screening. We send them over to the field office if there's some risk flags, and they let us know if they have any concerns with a property being in. And once that happens, we will send you a note back saying, congratulations, you've been accepted, or in much rarer cases, sorry, we weren't able to accept you at this time. And then we are also posting a list of on the website of every application we've received, as well as those who've been approved. So if you think you have sent us an application and you don't see your name on the list, please reach out again. Our apologies. And if you're not on the approved list, that means you have not yet been approved. There's always some that are still with the field office for screening, and some where they were denied for being too high risk of a property. Again, because the UPCS inspections do stop. So there, HUD has to balance that concern of potentially not doing a UPCS inspection for some number of years on a property that would otherwise be potentially high risk. We have a couple of activities coming up, and again, there will be more. So this was the series through the summer and fall. Those are mostly, again, a targeted sort of audience to let us figure out doing Zoom or Adobe Connect meetings, as well as to get some targeted input on this first round of standards, the 1.3s that got published. Going forward, there will be more open opportunities, so keep an eye out for those. If there's feedback, comments, things you want us to know, the email's down below, inspire@hud.gov, and we're happy to hear from you. So at this time, we'll open it up to questions. How are we doing that? Are we using chat, or are we going to open the mics?
We can do both. We can do the chat, or if they want to come on and open up their mics, they're more than welcome to do that.
All right, great. So there was one question in chat about the PowerPoints being available. I thought we sent that over. You're welcome to distribute it. Otherwise, we can put it on the website or something so that everyone has it.
Yeah, we will get all the PowerPoints loaded, as well as this. This session will also be recorded and available by the end of the week.
Okay, so there's a question about whether energy efficiency measures are included in the inspection process. Not directly. So one of the things we're doing with the NSPIRE standards, I sort of touched on it very, very briefly, is this idea of what we're calling critical to quality. So we're trying to have a very tailored set of indicators that singularly or in total really are identifications of substandard properties. Um, it's a much more focused inspection in that sense of we're looking for those sort of highest impact challenges. There are some deficiencies that by their nature may also have an energy efficiency effect. We've tried to describe that sort of as a side effect where that is relevant. But no, there's no direct efficiency measures in the proposed inspection. They're really focused more on health, safety, and habitability. So there's another question coming in. Thank you. It's, will NSPIRE have a new appeal process, or will it still be a DBA or technical review? It will be sort of both of those concepts will remain. What we're trying to do on our side is to enhance some of the systems and processes that support that. So we've heard, for example, that sometimes the DBAs don't stick. You're having to apply for them more than once. So we're looking at our internal business processes as well as the technology behind that to make that a little better for your experience with us. But hopefully we have less technical reviews because we have sort of better standards, and we're also, in some of the earlier presentations we talked about, we're looking at a different contract model that's more service oriented. But the short answer is yes, you will still have the ability to request a database adjustment for things that either you don't own or control, or unusual circumstances, right? Or a technical review for things that are essentially in error on that particular inspection. So you'll still have those rights, but hopefully the process is better and has a little bit better customer experience around it. Can I provide information on remote video inspections? Generally, yes, or at a high level, yes. So that's the use of remote technology like Zoom, FaceTime, something else, between an inspector in a location other than where that inspection is occurring. So one hypothetical that we've heard from the maintenance side is, look, I have some residents who are tech savvy enough and want to work with me, but they're concerned about a maintenance person entering their unit if they don't have to. So one thing we've seen is, right, they set up that video streaming, and then that maintenance person or that inspector is sort of directing that person, show me this, and the camera up, down. Really that person on the other end isn't doing the inspection. They're just sort of following those directions. And it's a way to sort of minimize person-to-person contact. Like I said, we're still in the early stages of that. For the NSPIRE demo, we're looking at it for both the NSPIRE inspection as well as testing with self-inspections. For HCV and regular UPCS, that's something that's still in the early stage. I don't know that we have formal guidance there other than some of the suggestions that went out with the COVID notices. But if that's something you're interested in testing with us or working with us to explore, NSPIRE.HUD.gov is a good mailbox for that, and we can route you to the right groups that are working through that. Any other questions on NSPIRE or Ash's presentation on the RTO? or other stuff you'd like us to take back on REAC more broadly?
Yeah, I have a question. Is the other guy's presentation going to be available on PowerPoint? There's a lot of good information on the slides relative to the going online with REAC. So,
I think the question was, will the slides be shared? And yes, the answer is yes. And then the presentation is also being recorded. So I think you'll get the link for that somehow.
thank you.
As Dan mentioned, any other questions that you all have about either Inspire or the return to operations, or generally, like Dan said, anything you want to take back, anything you want him or I to take back? Okay. Well, not hearing any, I think this may conclude our presentation. Dan, did you want to add anything else?
No, other than to say thank you again. We really sort of value these opportunities, and happy to speak to groups like yours and anyone else. So if there's anything else we can clarify in the future, if you have questions about REAC or Inspire, please reach out. Happy to talk again.
Yeah, and I'll add also, thank you so much. Appreciate you taking the time to spend with us today. And as I mentioned several times during the return to operations presentation, please check the HUD website on a weekly basis. There's going to be a lot of good information posted there, including the weekly heat maps, and that'll be a good source of information for you all to track kind of what it is REAC's looking at and evaluating in its process. So thank you all again. Thank you very much.